Hello everyone, Happy New Year, Primal here, and welcome to my 2021 End of the Year review. Today is technically January 1st, 2022. Yesterday was the very last day for 2021, and I prefer to get these out on the very last day at least, but I guess I still have a bigger time span if you want to include actual New Year's Day. I still think we're in the range to, do this, so yeah. 2021 was definitely a year. It was a lot better than 2020, but any year before 2020, it is much better. It was probably the best years of my life, to be honest. In regards to my life in general, 2021 was a lot better than 2020, but 2021, I didn't really put out as much content as I normally did. Like, 2020 was probably the year I put out the most. Or maybe it was either that or 2018, but yeah, this year, in regards to my content, it was fairly dry, and I do sincerely apologize for that, but I had a lot going on. I was in the process of finishing school, I graduated from college, got my degree, just had to sit down and focus on life a little bit more, and stuff like that. But I still wanted to get out all the awesome stuff that was coming out last year out for y'all. And of course, there's stuff this year that I'm hoping to get out for y'all as well, but like I said, I gotta try and balance. So, yeah. So why don't we try and get right into this? This one will go back to its traditional roots instead of, doing all my content from worst to best. It'll be in chronological order, and since I didn't really have a whole lot of my regular content out for y'all, I've also decided to include some things like off-screen from my life in here as well. It still has a fair amount of meat in it, so yeah, it's just not going to be as, big as the others, but that's probably good. Y'all probably don't want to sit down and watch like a 2.5 hour long video from me. People prefer to keep this content short and sweet, but there's still quite a lot to talk about, so it's going to be fairly lengthy, so just to give y'all a hint.
So at the start of the year, I ended up playing Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate on my handy-dandy Switch Lite, in preparation for Monster Hunter Rise, which was coming out in a couple months. It was the first and only game that I was stoked for the year at the time, until the release announcement for Resident Evil 8 finally came. While it took a lot of getting used to, I adapted well and ended up enjoying the heck out of the game, fighting old monsters that I had already fought in the past, from World, and fighting new ones that I had yet to fight and always wanted to. And believe me, there were quite a few, to be honest. From the razor-sharp Seregios, to the electrical Lagiacris, the rest of the Fated Four, Gormagala and Shagru Magala, Amatsu, Akantor, Ukanlos, heck, even Lao Shanlung. Heck, there are even monsters that I had little to no interest in that ended up becoming my true favorites, like Najarala the Snake Wyvern. Even basic ones like Great Macau. I took down every single one, with the exception of the extras afterwards, from Atal Ka onward. I mean the ones after you fight and defeat Atal Ka, and start raising up your G rank. Even the monsters I had long favored and always wanted to fight could not even disappoint, like Nursilla or Eknectar. After I had finally beaten all the main content, I began to slow down and take a break. But that's when one of my viewers slash commenters slash subscribers wanted to team up with me to take on the Deviants, namely Bloodbath Diablos. Well, let me tell you, that was not a monster to be trifled with. It definitely lived up to its namesake. But with his help, I ended up defeating it and farming its full set. And I'm currently working on the rest of the Deviants and the rest of the extra monsters, such as the entire Fatalis family, and the other variants like Chaotic Gore and Raging Bracky and all them. Along with the G-Ring versions of other big bosses such as Alatreyan and Amatsu and Akantor and Conlos and all them. It may take a bit, but I'll definitely come back and polish off all the extras I have yet to, and share it in a single video. Given my Switch's recording capabilities, it's a little different, like I can only record up to 30 seconds, so I have to compile it all and make sure I get what I want for y'all. So yeah, moving on now. And when I was really bored, I went back to Monster Hunter World and got to solo all the monsters I was having a tough time with, namely Alatreyan. There came a time where I was bored with nothing else to do. That was the time when the winter storms hit back home in Texas. And then the idea popped in my head to do a gaming music video, or GMV for short. It was an idea that I had on my mind for at least 4 years. It came to me while I was playing Arcane Studios' video game Prey. It reminded me of a certain song that I used to hear all the time when watching a certain Scooby-Doo movie. So I was eventually able to track down the song and be able to create this beloved little music video. Y'all should go check it out if you can. It's called The Aliens Are Here by the Hippos. No copyright infringement intended. So at some point I gotta go back and fix the screen format. Little Nightmares 2, while being one of the games I was looking forward to the most coming out this year, was also one that slipped my mind in the first part as well. I was just so caught up in what I was doing for school, I completely forgot it was about to come out. I knew it was probably gonna be good and maybe surpass even the first game. But everything that came out of it was completely unexpected for me regardless, especially when talking about the twist toward the end of the story. The new nightmares that you had to face were on a completely higher level than the first game, just as I expected them to be. The implementation of the new mechanics, especially combat, were extremely well crafted. And like the rest of the community, I really enjoyed the adorable relationship between Mono and Six. It was really a game that stuck with me for the first quarter of 2021, at least until the bigger and better new releases came. If I'm not mistaken, it released right around when the winter storms hit back home. They impacted a lot of people, and I called back and checked in to see if everyone was okay. It also gave me the opportunity to reconnect and rekindle old friendships I once had in the past. But given the fact that I had recently moved, I was out of the way of everything. So while everything was down, I was stuck and alone, left with plenty of time to my own devices, and the opportunity to check out more from this game that had just released. I kid you not, I was so immersed in it for the week and a half that I had to myself. And then I got to actually play it on the actual spring break, but sadly it didn't last as long as it did the extra winter break that I got due to untimely circumstances. There was hardly a single segment of it that I didn't enjoy. There were other levels that I enjoyed more than some, like the beginning one with the hunter or the one in the actual Pale City where the thin man's chasing you. But I really enjoyed the others like the school with the rubberneck teacher and the doctor who brought mannequins to life as well. But the final one inside the broadcast tower is what really took my breath away. Everything that happened in there just blew my mind. From the shocking yet sad final boss fight with Six, to the mind-melting ending that showed both of their fates. It was a wild ride all in all. This game was both beautiful and tragic, and I enjoyed every second of it. After I had finished Little Nightmares, out of the blue came the second part for the DLC for Doom Eternal, and the final chapter in the Doomslayer saga. This is where it all ended, the final battle against the devil himself and all of hell. There was a lot of surprising bits in it, I'll be honest. From the story behind the Prince of Darkness, to the Avengers Endgame reference that surpassed even the source material. It was all one wild ride, especially right towards the coup de grace of the end. The last level and the final boss itself were definitely the true highlights of this DLC, especially the ending that concluded the Doomslayer's story. It picks up right after where the last DLC left off, with the Doomslayer finally facing down with the devil himself. And like the Doomslayer, he initially tries to kill him right off the bat. Smartest thing anyone could do, really. But given the fact that he was resurrected in Urdak, the devil himself was invulnerable, and he told the Doomslayer to come straight to the capital of Hell, Amora, where their final battle would take place. So the first two levels were the World Spear, which was a segment in a Night Sentinel world, and the next was a part of Earth that was reclaimed from the demons. Both played a pretty big part in getting the Doomslayer straight to the capital of Hell, but they were pretty much filler and unmemorable to me. When the Doomslayer finally reaches Amora, he confronts the world's biggest horde of demons. which makes sense given where the battle was taking place. Then the Knight Sentinels appear in Avengers Endgame fashion, and the final battle for the fate of the universe takes place. And that whole level was just pure epicness in its own right. You had Knight Sentinels taking on demons with their tech, and especially with their giant mechs taking on Titan demons. Oh, it was just a sight to see. Then you reach the Devil's Tower, where the final battle is supposed to take place. And while it gave the Doomslayer a proper conclusion, it just wasn't all that special. It ended up being like a souped-up version of the Marauder enemy, with the Devil having a few interesting tricks here and there, like summoning projections of demons and such. And then during the fight, it is revealed that the Devil himself is actually the creator of the universe, and that the current one usurped him. Then the Doomslayer finally strikes the Dark Lord down and kills all the demons outside of their own realm, invading and attacking the universe. But in doing so, the Doomslayer is also laid to rest, concluding his story. And to be honest, I think it's best. I wouldn't care if this was actually the last Doom game. I think this is actually a good note for them to end on. I know that they said they had future Doom games planned, but given the way this one ended, I think this is probably the best ending that they could come up with, outside of what was already in the base game. And while this DLC did have its moments, it just didn't stack up to the first part, let alone the base game. Plus it made some fixes that nobody really liked, like nerfing the difficulty of the entire game. While Doom Eternal may be punishing, if difficulty is a core dynamic, then it's best not to mess with something like that. And they switched up the awesome main menu music made by Mick Gordon, which was a remix of the Icon of Sin theme. That one really got to me. Plus I prefer the old HUD and graphics compared to the new one given by this DLC. But overall it was still a pretty awesome conclusion and experience. When Monster Hunter Rise finally arrived, I was pretty drained, to be honest. I guess the wait took more effort and took more out of me than actually playing the game did. But yeah, it was a really enjoyable experience. So like World, it has more of an actual story. There's a stampede of rampaging monsters attacking your village, and it's up to you to figure out why. I guess since World, the Monster Hunter games have started having an actual theme for their monsters. So Monster Hunter Rise is Japanese themed. It takes place in a Japanese style village, and a lot of the new monsters are based off of Japanese legends and yokai, or demons or spirits. For example, you have Gos Harag, which is a fanged beast which has the ability to form weapons of ice with its frosty breath, and it's based off your basic Oni. You have the fiery Rakna Kadaki, a Temnoceran spider monster with a fiery temper and motif, which is based off of a Joro Gumo. Grady Zuchi, which is based off the Sickle Weasel. Aknosong, which is based off the Parasol Yokai, a bird wyvern that is also of the fire element. Bishatni, which is a fanged beast, which is based off of a Tengu. Somnacant, which is based off of a Japanese mermaid and has the ability to put you to sleep. Tetranodon, which is based off of a Kappa, an amphibian with a sumo wrestler style. Magnamalo, the flagship monster, which is based off of a demon possessing Japanese armor. And then you have the final bosses, Narwa and Ibushi, which are based off of the Japanese gods of thunder and wind, Raiden and Fujin. The list just goes on, guys, I'll tell you that. And sorry if I forgot most of the yokai names, I haven't really had much time to sit down and learn them all, let alone for them to stick with me. And while Rise was in itself amazing, there just wasn't a lot for it to keep me stuck to it, like World did. It had pretty much run its course the moment I had beat the game. Yeah, there were a few other updates that added the Elder Dragons, such as the trio of Kushala Daora, Teostra, and returning monster Chameleos. Not to mention the invading tyrant Basil Juice from World. And there was one that even added Valstrax, well, at least a variant of Valstrax, which is the flagship dragon of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. But like I said, they had all pretty much run their course and were done and dusted the moment I beat them. This one did definitely have a lot of interesting new things to offer, such as the wire bug mechanic, which allowed you to traverse terrain in various ways, and the Rampage Tower Defense mode, where you had to set up certain weapons to take down and stop monsters from getting through certain areas. That was really fun as well. And then there was the addition of the Apex versions of certain monsters, but they were practically cheap knockoffs of the deviants from Generations Ultimate. And at the start you could only fight them in the Rampage, but the later updates allowed you to fight them like outside of that mode. And then there was the wyvern riding mechanic where you could actually mount and control monsters and make them fight others, or just make them do whatever. To be honest, I really do want to go back to Rise. There's just not enough content for me to do so, at least not right now. Fortunately, its G-Rank expansion game, Sunbreak, was just announced, and we get to go to a whole new area with a whole new story, just like Iceborne and World. We get to take on monsters with a Gregorian Gothic European motif to them, such as fanged wyverns based off of werewolves, or elder dragons based off of vampires, and man, I really can't wait to see more. It's definitely going to have a plethora of old and new monsters in it. I definitely think it's going to be Rise's defining moment. Duality is the 3D capstone game that I worked on for a college project for the first half of the year. It tells the story of a young boy named Atlas who lives on a series of floating islands whose people have the ability to communicate with the dead. One day, he loses his twin sister in a tragic accident and goes on a quest to go and save her. With the help of a mysterious spirit named Lucius, he is able to accomplish his goal, but later it is revealed that Lucius has more ulterior motives. I gotta say guys, this game is definitely one of the best projects I've worked on. It was a really fun experience and probably the most memorable of 2021 for me. For those who don't really know, my career goal in life is to be a music composer for film and video games, and working on these kinds of school projects allowed me to do just that. It's been something I've wanted to do since my freshman year in high school, when I was taking a video game class and my teacher sat me in front of a computer and assigned me to be the audio designer for the game project we were working on. Sadly, things didn't really work out with anyone's project, but I really learned a lot and I really wanted to do more of it. And the games that I worked on in college, such as A Murder of Crows and this one, were definitely where my skills began to come to fruition and shine properly. Though A Murder of Crows was last year, so it's not featured here sadly. But I may do more with it in the future. I did a wide variety of stuff for this project, such as narrative, voice acting, and of course, music and sound, which is my main focus. I made an awesome and wholesome ambient soundtrack that complemented the game perfectly. I breathed life into the characters that we made by giving them a proper voice, such as the main antagonist Lucius, as well as the other spirit characters as well, and I helped shape the story into what it was meant to be. And my teammates, despite the major differences I had with them, were really awesome as well. Also, looking back at her main character's design, do you think Pixar inadvertently ripped us off with their new movie Luca? Now we finally get to my personal game of the year, at least in regards to what I've played. Resident Evil 8. Village. When the info drops and announcement came, this was not at all what I was expecting, to be honest. But then it ended up being the most beautifully crafted and probably most played game for me this whole year. It takes place 3 to 4 years after Resident Evil 7, still following new protagonist Ethan Winters, who has settled down in Europe with his wife Mia and started a family and had a baby girl named Rosemary. One night his entire life is turned upside down yet again when Chris Redfield, the main protagonist of Resident Evil overall, barges into his home and supposedly kills his wife and kidnaps his daughter. Then one thing leads to another, and Ethan finds himself in an ancient village where the entire story of Resident Evil began. After exploring for a bit, he learns the dark secrets that this village has to hold, from the village's estranged townsfolk to the monsters that lurk deep within. And given that this game was for Resident Evil's 25th anniversary, it really went all out with the classic Halloween horror motif for what was in store. From werewolves to vampires to cyborg soldiers, this game had it all. It celebrated everything that this franchise has accomplished in the past. All of its core dynamics perfectly melded into one complete package. Eventually, Ethan is captured by Mother Miranda, the mysterious and evil ruler of the village, and the 4 lords that serve under her, who are adopted children. You have Lady Alcina Dimitrescu, the giant vampire lady that everyone's been going gaga over since the beginning. She lives in the giant castle on the outside of the village with her 3 daughters, Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra. And of course, the castle itself is full of other vampire creatures as well. This area celebrates the classic Resident Evil play style of survival horror, with you running all over the place with limited ammunition and supplies, solving puzzles, trying to escape alive. Along the way, Ethan meets the village's Duke, who is this game's version of the merchant from Resident Evil 4, and it just so happens that he knows him, given a quote he says. The Duke tells Ethan more about the village and how to save his daughter. He tells him that in order to save Rose, he'll have to take on the other lords as well. So Ethan ventures off to take on the next one, Donna Beneviento, and her little doll friend, Angie. Her area is more based around the psychological elements introduced in Resident Evil 7, and this is where the terror really begins to ramp up. Ethan wanders the house alone looking for clues, and while solving a puzzle deep within its bowels, that's when things start to get darker and scarier, as Donna uses illusions to taunt Ethan about his past, and confronts him with the visage of an evil demon baby trying to eat him. Towards the end of it all, Ethan tracks her down and murders her in cold blood. And while this area was extremely well done for what it was going for, I still wish we had more of an actual boss fight against Donna and Angie. After getting the next piece to save Rose, Ethan then ventures off to the reservoir to confront the next lord, Salvatore Moreau, the Merman. I'm not really sure if there's any past core dynamic being celebrated here in this area, but it's very reminiscent of the Del Lago boss fight from Resident Evil 4. And unlike Donna, it's a bit more confrontational, with Salvatore Moreau being the only enemy in the area, and he chases you all throughout as a giant man-eating fish. And while I enjoyed this area and it was more intense and we did have an actual boss fight, I still wish it was a bit more fleshed out. And I do wish we got to fight more new monsters like actual mermen, which was advertised in one of the info things that I read about. Plus it was even teased by the Duke. After defeating Moreau, Ethan is then approached by the 4th and final lord, Karl Heisenberg, who surprisingly offers him his aid, but not without proper, how should I put it, proof that he is worthy. So after going through a trial in the Den of the Lycans, Ethan then heads for Heisenberg's factory, where the reclusive lord tells him his tragic backstory, about how Miranda took him from his own family and then turned him into a freak, and abused him and forced him into her servitude. He tells Ethan that he wants to team up and use Rose's power to take her down, but not wanting his daughter to be used as a weapon, Ethan figuratively spits in his face, and Heisenberg drops him into the bowels of his factory, where he must face his cyborg army, which is very reminiscent of Frankenstein's army. Ethan then finally runs into Chris again, who tells him everything. He tells him that it wasn't Mia that he shot and presumably killed, but it was actually Miranda in disguise. She has the ability to shapeshift into anyone, and that she's planning to use Rose to replace her long-dead daughter. With a little help from Chris, Ethan is able to fight and defeat Heisenberg, but then he is suddenly confronted and killed by Miranda. Chris and his Hound Wolf squad then venture off to stop Miranda and avenge Ethan and rescue Rose and destroy the village. While down in her lab, that's where we learn the whole story. Miranda has lived for hundreds of years thanks to something called the Megamycete, which is a supernatural source for the mold that was found in Resident Evil 7. We also learn of her ties to create Evelyn, the 7th game's main antagonist. But the biggest, most shocking revelation of all was her connection and mentorship towards Oswald E. Spencer, the founder of the Umbrella Corporation. It was because of her that he set out and found the progenitor virus, which was used to create all the previous viruses from the previous games. And it was because of her that he founded Umbrella alongside Edward Ashford and James Marcus. And Umbrella's very logo was based off a symbol found in a cave somewhere in the village. Chris also finds the real Mia locked away in the lab, and she also shares their secret with him. Like her, Ethan was infected with Evelyn's mold, but was unable to be controlled by her. And it was because of that infection that he was able to survive so many supposedly lethal injuries, like getting his head bashed in by Jack Baker in the previous game, or being able to reattach limbs that had been severed in certain events. And it was because of that infection that he was actually able to revive and be able to go off and stop Miranda once and for all and rescue his daughter. After being rescued by the Duke, of course. He confronts Miranda at the ceremony site where she is attempting to resurrect her daughter through Rose. The two fight in an epic final battle, and he kills Miranda. But at the cost of what little life he had left in him still. In his final moments, he gives Rose to Chris, bids the two of them goodbye, and stays behind so they can escape so he can detonate the village and destroy everything Miranda had done. Ethan's sacrifice saved them all, and his wife and his new friend mourned his loss. Even his daughter when she was older. Guys, I could really go on for hours about this game and its beauty. Of course the story has a few flaws here and there, but it was truly perfect in every single other way, and it definitely did a much better job than 6 in meshing all the previous elements of Resident Evil together. I played through it so many times on all of its modes, including the basic, very easy, and Village of Shadows, which was punishing enough as it is. I did a boss ranking on it, and a few other games as well, including Resident Evil 4, which I should have done before. That's how much I love this game, guys, and it is truly forever my game of the year in regards to the ones that I've played, and definitely one of my most memorable experiences of 2021 overall, alongside with college graduation coming up right after it. It had the survival horror, it had the action, it had all the new other elements, it had everything. And there really were no bad ideas or story beats, though the ones involving Chris probably could have used much better execution. I could pretty much go on for hours about how much I love this game, guys, but to be honest, right now I really can't think of anything else to say, so I'm just gonna let the rest of this segment play out. Plus my mind's pretty tired at the moment.
And the fish king appeared. Because
Goodbye, Rosemary. Ethan.
This is our end. This is the end. For us both.
That's right. He stayed so we could all escape. I'm sorry.
Hey, Dad. Happy birthday.
Aww.
By the time I had finished Resident Evil 8, I had also finished my final spring semester for college, and it was finally time to go home and graduate with the rest of my friends and classmates. That entire week was one of my best and most eventful in the entire year, let alone my whole life. First I went racing with my family on Talladega Speedway. Then me and my mom began our great trek back home to Texas, where I got to visit all my old stomping grounds in Waco, see my family in the area, of course. And within the next couple of days of commencement, I got to see all of my old best friends, childhood, high school, college alike. There was Levi in the first clip, who was a big fan of my music. There was Maddie, who I worked with on A Murder of Crows. There was Josh, one of my college best friends. Preston, my childhood best friend. And then Jeremy, one of my best friends from high school. And then the next day I got to see Cameron, my brother in Christ from church. There were others as well, but I didn't really have any clips or anything of them here. Sorry. So after returning home from college graduation, I got to be able to sit down and play Nier Replicant. It is the remake / remaster of the very first Nier game that came out in 2010. Actually, it's more than that. It's the fully realized, completed version of that game. Not only did it have more polish, but it also featured every last single bit of cut content from the very first version of the game. An amazing new mission and an amazing new boss fight, along with a true E ending. And I gotta say, it really made me cry tears of joy and put my life in a positive light. I'm being figurative about the tears part, guys. I didn't really cry during that bit of the ending. I mean, I liked Automata when it first came out, but this game really surpassed that one and all of my expectations. And I'm really glad that I finally got to sit down and experience this game and its beautiful story. What you see here is a custom-made intro that I made for my 800 subscriber special. I don't really like using pre-made content like that, but I was running low on time to do this video. So after I was done playing all the big titles that were currently out that I could currently afford, I decided to return to some of my older series and finish them, namely The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine, which I tried to do back in 2018. It was definitely one of my favorite expansions ever, let alone story arcs for The Witcher in general. Like some other expansions before it felt like a whole other game in general. So this DLC happens to be Geralt's last and final hunt. He is called forth to the beautiful French-like country of Toussaint to fight an unknown monster, on behalf of the Duchess. It is later revealed that this monster is a vampire named Detloff, a higher one too. He is not a mindless beast and has specific victims for specific reasons. Along the way, Geralt reunites with his old best friend, Regis, who is also a vampire, and he decides to help him track him down given that Detleff is his adopted blood brother or whatever. It is later revealed that Detleff is only killing because he is being blackmailed. Someone is threatening to kill the girl he loves, unless he kills the 5 specific victims listed for him. It is then later revealed that Detleff's girlfriend is the Duchess's sister, and that she is the one blackmailing him. Angered by her betrayal, Detleff threatens to kill her and destroy the city, so it's now up to Geralt and Regis to stop him. And there's also quite a few other events happening along the way as well. There's plenty to do in this DLC, lots of interesting side quests and monsters to hunt, like lifting the curse of a girl who is turning into a bird, or reversing that on an old lady turned into a wight forced into hunger for life, or proving yourself worthy of the 5 virtues of Toussaint and getting the ultimate silver sword to kill all monsters with. But Detleff is not the only thing Geralt will have to face here in Toussaint. He'll also have to deal with the bitchy attitude of the Duchess, and probably gain the trust and respect of her most trusted knight, Damien. and it all culminates in the final moments of the DLC, where you have to protect
Buddy,
the
right
city
now
from
I
the
got
lesser
the-
vampires that are attacking it, potentially confront an ancient evil, or take part in a quest involving fairy tales that we all grew up with when we were kids. And then there's the epic final battle with Dettlaff, one of the very last beasts Geralt will ever hunt. And then the events of the end are the true cherry on top, like learning the reasoning for the Duchess's sister's revenge and getting her to forgive her sister, Geralt and Regis emotionally parting ways once more, and the Witcher finally reaching the end of his path and retiring to his new summer home in a beautiful vineyard in the country alongside whoever he decided to romance. And if you follow the events in canon properly, it's most likely going to be Yennefer. But it could also be Triss if you chose her, or Ciri if you chose neither or tried to end up in a threesome with both Yen and Triss. Even Geralt's bard friend, Dandelion, for that matter. It's truly a beautiful DLC and a beautiful conclusion to The Witcher's tale. I've also heard that The Witcher 4 is confirmed and is now in the works, but to be honest, it all feels unnecessary at this point. Yes, I truly love The Witcher, but with an ending like this, what's the point to keep on going? I'll admit it wasn't really easy for me to come back to this one since I had been out of the game for so long and I was a little bit rusty in my skills. But it didn't take me too long to get back in the saddle of Roach, improve my skills as a legendary monster hunter. But this DLC is also where all the bugs and lag started to really get to me as well. But overall, I'm glad that I finally got to experience this DLC in full for myself, and properly complete Geralt's story.
The blade may be grasped solely by one who possesses the 5 chivalric virtues.
Folk call me a lot of things, but virtuous? I don't know.
Yet I do know, for I know who you are. You have proven yourself capable of great sympathy. You are a man of honor, as many can attest. Of humble means yourself, you showed generosity to others. Your valor is the stuff of legends. Reason guides your actions, as it does those of all who are wise. You have proven the 5 chivalric virtues dwell in your heart.
I so don't feel like going anywhere. Sit here a while longer?
So we shall, my friend. We have witnessed, and in fact on several occasions incited, many great and weighty events. After all that toil, I believe we deserve a bit of a rest.
That we do.
A few weeks ago, I awoke to the realization that I know not what to do next. I have no plan. I have no goal. And you know what? I like that. Finally, I can stop thinking about politics and focus on what's important to me.
So after I was done with my rebooted series for Witcher Blood and Wine, I finally decided to go back and complete Death Stranding. It took a lot of work and effort given the game's content and gameplay, but I did it. And I was able to complete it right in time for 4th of July this past year. Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm recording this right on January 1st of 2022. I saw a lot of the big major plot points from it when this game first released back in 2019, but there was still a lot from it that I had yet to see for myself, and overall I got to experience it in full for the most part. Especially the ending. And during my time returning to it, I finally saw the beauty of the art that this game was. While the general loop of going from place to place was long, arduous, and tiring, especially in the beginning, the payoff of it all was truly worth it. Being able to reconnect everyone in a broken dystopian world, allowing everyone to come together again, and stop the end of the world. Learning about each and every character that I interacted with, it was truly a memorable experience for me. There were more bits in the segment that I wanted to add, especially the ones regarding the whale BTs, but for some strange reason, my YouTube content manager wouldn't let me download them. My favorite bits were definitely in the later half of the game, when I was able to unlock full combat potential, interact more with my favorite characters like Mama or Hartman, like even Deadman for that matter. And while the journey was indeed arduous, I saw a lot of amazing sights from the game world, like vast Martian surfaces, rainy grassy plains and canyons, to giant snowy mountains, even Silent Hill-like apocalyptic cities, and my favorite parts were indeed the BT encounters, especially the later ones as well, like the lions and the giants and all that. And one of the most memorable bits to me was Mama fusing with her sister Lochna. It was all indeed one incredible journey, and I'm glad I finally got to experience it in full. The bits with Cliff played by Mads Mikkelsen were indeed awesome as well. From the flashback cutscenes, to the boss encounters in twisted versions of World War I, World War II, and Vietnam, and then learning more about Sam and his story, and allowing it to come to an awesome proper conclusion at the very end of it all, when he saves the world and finally finds peace with his little BB, Louise. I gotta say, when this game first came out, it maybe had some really weird dreams. Like the day after I watched some videos from Death Stranding when it first released, the BB's lullaby was stuck in my head for so long it really put some weird images in my head while I slept. Like I had a dream that me and my friends were somehow involved in the Death Stranding world, and we had to save one of them. I won't mention her name, just out of respect, plus the fact that, well, she didn't really like me all that much. And somehow the whole plot of that dream was like the season finale of Season 4 for Teen Titans. Like somehow she had turned into a baby and we had to find a way to change her back to normal. And at the end of it she did, with the BB's theme song playing. And then I woke up and I was like, what in the actual... I tell you guys, that dream is probably the most memorable one that I've had so far. Well guys, that's basically all I have to say for this one, so I'm just gonna let the rest of this segment play out.
You can't stop this thing.
No one can.
We got doomed, Sam. This was only ever gonna end one way. So come on!
Let's finish this, Higgs.
Couldn't leave him all alone. I couldn't. Get off of him! Now! I had it all wrong. All wrong.
When I got really bored, I decided to take a deeper look into the indie game Fury. Ever since 2019, I heard some really interesting and awesome stuff about it, but I could never really get into it. Its aesthetic just didn't click with me at the time. But then I watched full videos on the whole game, and that's when I got really into it. And I decided to play it on its 5th anniversary. What you see here is a personalized intro I made for it for my 800 subscriber special, just like Nier Replicant. But like before, I cut all the intro related stuff and left the meat in there. I was able to beat at least the first 5 bosses on my first try. I didn't get that kind of luck until like the last regular boss before the secret final one. The next 2 bosses right after the hand, which are the Song and the Burst, they were extremely challenging, and once I was done with Fury, I decided to do my own thing for a bit and work on some things for my career. Namely, I made a short film with my mom, and I also did a few animations for some of the summer classes I was taking. I also finally got the music demo reel that I wanted to up, featuring the boss fight from the 2D Unity game kit from like last year, using the song that I made for it, just for fun like my professor suggested I could. And then after that I decided to go back and do whatever with some of the older games I played, like Sekiro, and complete some of the harder challenges I had yet to actually do, like defeat Sword Saint Ishin properly and fight Father Owl. I had long been debating whether or not I wanted to try out Mortal Shell. It was really a mixed bag when it first came out. In the times before it released, so many people were crapping all over it, and their views were really starting to taint my vision on it. But after I got to look at it some more, and see some more positive stuff from it, I decided while it may not be the best, I think it's worth a shot. So I sat down, spent a lot of time and effort creating my character to match me, got into it for a little bit, and decided, hey, I actually really like this. Though I really couldn't get too far into it, cause if I'm being frank with y'all, in my honest opinion, it's harder than any other Souls games known to me. Whether they be the actual Souls games or any other Souls-like them. I got stuck at the pole dancing boss, and I haven't really figured out all the progression from where I'm at right now. So yeah, I still have a ways to go with this game, but I do plan to come back to it someday soon. But I really enjoy the concept behind it. Becoming an anime vampire and draining the blood of my enemies and fighting for the peace of the world was really something that clicked with me. I don't know how or why, but this stuff really just interests me. The story's awesome, the characters are awesome, and are actually really friendly to me. I don't think I've really had any actual real negative altercations with the cast that I've met so far. Plus the powers and abilities I get in this game are really neat too. And while there aren't a lot of really special boss fights that stick out like the Souls games themselves, the devs for this game really got creative with the antagonists that I'd be facing. I really can't wait for the day that I get back and finish this game and see more from it, because it actually is pretty good in its own right. Mortal Shell was definitely a game I was surprised to be returning to, but given the fact that it was offering me free DLC for a limited time, how could I not? It offered a new story, a new character and weapon, and a new roguelike mode with new abilities and such for everyone. The game felt a lot brighter, more positive, and more fun to play than it did initially in 2020. What you see here is also another intro, but it will be the last. There was just so much new content to keep players entertained and keep them coming back to this one. Now here's a series that I keep getting pulled back and forth with. Five Nights at Freddy's. It's an indie point-and-click horror game series created by Scott Cawthon back in 2014. When I was first starting my sophomore year in high school, my friends Teddy and Jeremy would not shut up about it. My curiosity grew to the point where I wanted to see more from it. I remember my bud Sebastian showing me a gameplay trailer and getting my first jump scare from Chica. I remember watching Let's Plays of Jacksepticeye and Markiplier and all the other big names on YouTube playing these games. At one point I'd be fully interested, then another I'd be completely out of the series. But eventually I would come back to it to see more from it periodically. And while this year may not have any importance for numerical celebration, such as an anniversary, this year was definitely one that was important for the series in general. The creator of the games, Scott Cawthon, was finally forced to retire after he had been doxxed for just having a simple opinion. Jeez, people. I really feel bad for him, and I hope that he's at peace with his family right now. I'm not implying that he's dead or anything, he is indeed alive and safe. And this year was finally the year that I finally got fully invested in the series. I was reading comments on a certain YouTube video about certain lore points in the story, and then I just wanted to know the entirety of the whole plot behind it all. So I did some internet searching and came across a full story on quotev.com. It wasn't by the actual creators or anything like that, to be honest. It was all fan-made. It was written by some user called The Edgy Furry. And I'll leave a link in the description if you guys want to go check it out. I should probably do that with my previous videos as well. But I spent an entire weekend in September reading the whole thing, and that's when I was fully hooked. I enjoyed learning a lot more about William Afton, the main antagonist of the game series. I enjoyed learning more about certain plot points behind the stories of the animatronics and how they came to be and how they connected with others as well, and learning the full chronological timeline of the franchise. And the story, despite having a few flaws here and there, namely grammatical ones, it was extremely well done and very well written. It expanded more on all of the characters without adding any of the disgusting bits from the fandom from the past, such as shipping or whatever, and it told the story of the first 6 main games beautifully. And if you ask me, it really could have and should have ended there after FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator, when all the bad guys finally burned to death and die, including William Afton himself, along with the evil animatronics he made. That's when I decided to play all of the games for Halloween month. They were all available on PS4. I wasn't sure about Pizzeria Simulator at first, so I didn't get it then. But now I do have it, and I'll try and play it later this year, hopefully. I tried to play them all in chronological order, starting with FNAF 4, which I still have yet to complete, but I'm having a tough time doing so, cause, be honest guys, it's really that scary to me. And the fact that it's all audio-oriented doesn't really make it any easier for me. I have no way of securing myself by muting everything and focusing only on the video to lessen the jump scares. Sister Location was pretty easy to play through, until the 5th night where my controller needed to be calibrated more to enter the code properly. I faced many a jump scare from Ennard. FNAF 2 was pretty simplistic, but it was also really difficult. It took me quite a bit of effort to get through it. Same for FNAF 1 without the difficulty. And FNAF 3, despite its flaws, was definitely my favorite. So now let's talk about some of the content I didn't exactly fully feature on my channel. So 2021 happened to be the 20th anniversary of everyone's favorite childhood toy series, Bionicle. And while I was bored out of my mind one day on winter break, I stumbled across a long-lost forgotten dream now turned reality. It was a full fan-made feature film of my favorite and last Bionicle toy line that I ever bought, featuring the Baraki. It was around 3 hours long and covered every single story detail to a T. It even gave me answers I did not yet expect to find. I was all about Bionicle when I was younger. I watched all 3 of the movies that were made. And when the Baraki came out, it was teased that there was going to be a movie about them as well, but sadly it never came to fruition, and I long awaited the day I would actually see something like this. The day that I found this fan film was one of the best days of my life. It had everything and then some. It had 100% accuracy to the comic source material I used to read when I was younger, and even expanded upon the other mysteries and stories I had yet to hear about. The voice actors were near perfect. A lot of the lines were taken straight out of the books and comics, and might I add, adapted perfectly. And the side story material, while lengthy, gave the proper lead into the next chapter featuring the Awakening of Matanui. Like, you had the Toa Nuva going to places to prepare for the Awakening of Matanui that were only mentioned a time or two. You got to see many characters returning from the previous lines, such as Rudaka from Web of Shadows, and meet others that were only spoken of or shown for a brief time from what I've read and seen, like the Shadowed One in Karzani. One of my favorite parts was when the Toa Nuva had to free the Bow Rock for their true purpose to awaken Matanui. It even made room for characters from the previous line from Voya Nui, like Axon, the Paraka, Brutaka, all of them as well. There were even points where characters I didn't really care for much in the past actually became my favorites here in this movie, like Mantax, the Black Baraki. This scene shown here is one of my personal favorites, and it does a lot for his character as well. In the comics that I read, he came off as nothing but a self-absorbed brute, but this scene here really changed my perspective of him by showing proper reasoning behind his actions and his attitude. Here, he confronts his brothers about there being a traitor amongst them, and that being the reason why they were locked away deep in the sea, becoming monsters of the dark depths. Periodically, he would return to where they were imprisoned, searching for something, but nobody knew what. But here it is revealed that he was actually looking for evidence for a traitor, and there he found it. A token that showed that one of them was an ally of Makuta. He threatens them by saying that their plans won't come to fruition because he'll destroy the mask if one of them doesn't come clean right there and then. It is then quickly revealed that Takadox was the traitor, which is a shame because I was also starting to like him. His calm tone and rhetoric really made him interesting to me. But then again, it was always known that he was a sneaky son of a bitch. There was really a lot of story material happening in this movie, but it was all executed and concluded properly. And it was definitely one of the most memorable bits of 2021 to me, especially on Bionicle's 20th anniversary.
But I must admit, I will enjoy the peace and quiet when you're gone.
And even though they weren't exactly a part of my channel, let's talk a little bit about the cinema I saw throughout the year, starting with the epic rematch between the two kaiju champions, King Kong and Godzilla. While I prefer King of the Monsters over this one was truly one of very few thrill rides of this year.
But why?
And then several months later, my favorite Marvel character, Carnage, finally came to the big screen, and they did his character a fair amount of justice in the sequel of Venom.
I'm sick of being treated like a dog. Calling on the perch doesn't make any of that go away. Where you make a snake, I shall come.
The final chapter in the first half of Tom Holland's Spider-Man saga is something I have yet to see still, but I have some very special plans for that coming up real soon. Attack on Titan finally came to a close earlier this year. I watched all the episodes of the first half of the final season, and witnessed the final chapter the day before it was supposed to be fully released, and I gotta say it really left me with that bittersweet feeling everyone was talking about that Isayama said he would. True, it wasn't my cup of tea either, but I still found peace within it. While I was home for college graduation, me and my buddy Jeremy got to play the latest edition of the House of the Dead series, Scarlet Dawn, while at Pinstack's Arcade. Later this year, me and my surrogate little bro Cameron got to do some multiplayer stuff together on PlayStation, namely Destiny 2. I got to try out all the demos for all the expansion DLC, and we had some pretty cool and epic moments playing together. But then we ran out of stuff to do, so we switched to Minecraft. Being a part of the indie and itch.io community has led me to discover one of its best, Zardy's Maze, made by YouTuber SwankyBox. It's a free indie horror where you have to escape a maze full of terrible scarecrows trying to kill you. And while I parted ways from the teammates I worked with to create Duality and A Murder of Crows, I still remained connected to them, and I was able to come back and try out some of the new games they were working on, such as this new Little Nightmares-style horror called Outgrown, which accomplished what we could not, especially in regards to spiders. So now let's talk about the things that I wanted to play this year, and that did come out this year, but couldn't. The first of that being the Iki Island expansion of Ghost of Tsushima and the director's cut. It was a perfect DLC, and it brought Jin's story full circle as he explored the past of his father and learned to move on from his own. I did end up getting the DLC, but sadly, given all my other responsibilities and projects, I never got around to it. So I'm hoping to this year. There was also the Aliens Fireteam game that came out this year as well that I wanted to try out. It was multiplayer, and it was a good chance for me to connect with my friends and do stuff with them. I had Cameron to team up with, but I still needed to find a third member, plus I couldn't really afford it. My discovery of this game also coincided with the surprising discovery of an actual high school play of Alien that took place in New Jersey. I heard it was pretty awesome and it was really well done when I watched it. I even saw that Sigourney Weaver and Ridley Scott gave them their support and came out to see it. I probably could have and should have done a full reaction to it, and I'm kinda sad that I didn't. But regardless, it was still one of the most memorable bits from 2021 for me. Life is Strange also got another addition to its series with True Colors. It tells the story of a young girl named Alex Chen who has the power to feel other people's emotions and do interesting things with them. She goes to visit her brother, but then a tragedy happens to him and she has to figure out what happened to him. I may give it a shot one day, but I still have a lot about it to figure out.
I can't even understand why they're feeling it.
Then there was the expansion DLC for Final Fantasy VII Remake featuring Yuffie, the Intergrade DLC, but sadly it was only a PS5 exclusive, so I couldn't play it. Out of the Literal Blue came a full remaster of Sonic Colors from 11 years ago for all modern consoles. I wanted to give it a try, but I heard it became an instant dumpster fire due to its rushed production and massive amount of glitches. Metroid is still alive and kicking and now reawakening with its newest addition to the series, Metroid Dread. Once I finally catch a break, I may look into it as well. Pokemon is finally able to reclaim something to its namesake with the remasters of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl from 15 years ago with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. It may not really hold a candle to the older remakes and remasters, but surprisingly enough it is able to accomplish something with nostalgia alone, with maybe a few new tricks here and there. And there's always some time to invest in Zelda given that its older games are always being ported to Switch. And with Kingdom Hearts' beloved main character Sora finally completing the roster, now's as good a time as any to get into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Sora is finally here.
And as I've witnessed throughout the years, there's still a lot of interesting indie horror out there, such as Poppy Playtime, which released this past October. A game that delivered so well with its first introductory chapter. And surprisingly enough, Just Shapes and Beats keeps adding new 6 songs to its album, with plenty of cool, interesting ideas and updates. And of course, Guardians of the Galaxy has to come out of nowhere and get a decent game as well. Deltarune has finally returned with a second and even more improved chapter. New mechanics, new twists and turns in the story, and a completely hilarious and awesome new antagonist. Pray for the Gods is finally complete and out on all platforms now. And while I may not have been completely invested in the modern arc of Five Nights at Freddy's, I hear that Security Breach happened to be a masterpiece in its own right. It still needs some polish, but it has interesting new mechanics, a brand new awesome story, awesome new characters, you name it.
Are you having fun yet?
And then there's 2021's Game of the Year, It Takes Two. A beloved story about handling divorce. It focuses on two parents getting ready to split up. Their daughter is distraught by it and wishes upon a book to bring them back together. Some way or another, dream or not, they become the dolls that she's made of them. In the world that they are trapped in, the book tries and helps them get back together. They go through many trials to work out their problems, and in the end, they finally get back together. And the book, while somewhat obnoxious and troublesome, despite throwing a monkey wrench in every one of their attempts to try and split up, proves that he really cares about them and their love and does his best to get them back together, and it succeeds eventually in the end and the family's happy. It really hits home for me, especially being a child who has had parents split up themselves. Not to mention that their divorce just came out of nowhere for me. It just happened. My mom took me and left my dad. And this game is pretty much everything. It's a shooter, it's a fighter, it's an RPG, dungeon crawler. It's pretty much every single genre known to man at once, in every single one of its segments. But of course, puzzle adventure is at the core of its dynamics. And it truly deserved to be Game of the Year. And if I had played it myself, it would have been mine as well, but I only ended up playing Resident Evil 8, so given that's the only one I played, it's my Game of the Year. So that's everything that has come out that I have yet to get to. Let's talk about stuff that has yet to come out that I'm looking forward to. Like the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Let's see where Miles' interdimensional travels take him when it finally releases. Then we have the upcoming sequel to the astounding Sonic the Hedgehog movie, now featuring Knuckles and who knows who else.
Oh, snap.
And let's not forget Sonic Frontiers, a new game that may very well be the franchise's last chance.
Sonic Frontiers.
Impossible.
The Rats and the Tail return in a surprising sequel to the astounding story of A Plague Tale 3 years ago.
Come on, you've seen worse than this.
Here he lies.
The DLC to Cuphead is finally set and on its way.
And you'll need it. For there's a new challenge waiting around every corner on the amazing DLC Island.
June 30th, 2022.
Spider-Man and Miles return and team up to take down Venom. And Ragnarok is coming. Will Kratos and his mischievous son Atreus be able to stop the end of the world and give this story in Norse mythology a proper ending? The next chapter in Horizon's story is one of the first new releases this year. Will Aloy be able to stop the new machines and the new threat destroying her world?
A snake? A cobra?
And then there's Elden Ring coming out right after it, a new Souls-like created by Hidetada Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, and George R.R. Martin, the creator of Game of Thrones. And while it may seem beyond my reach, I am more than excited for the next chapter in Senua's story within the Hellblade saga. Dead Space is finally coming back.
Thank you. And with that, guys, my 2021 end of the year review is finally concluded. I'm recording this a bit way later than I had initially planned. I'm very tired. It is a bit past January 1st now, a little bit outside the range. It would have been done sooner, but it's a lot of stuff going on. So I hope you all enjoyed. Happy New Year, guys. Can't wait to see what 2022 holds in store for all of us. I hope to bring y'all more awesome content throughout the year like I had showed y'all and the after stuff from what I had done initially. But at the same time, I also have to balance life, and I'm hoping to accomplish goals that I want to accomplish with my life this year. Like, just being able to get out on my own and, get something in my field. And oh, surprise, but there's something I kind of wanted to tell you guys, but recently I've met somebody, and I can't wait to see where that goes. So yeah, with that said out of the way, I hope y'all enjoyed all the stuff that's not actually featured on my channel, like especially towards the end, both video and music related, like outside of like what I did this year is not mine, no copyright infringement intended. I will try and post links later, and Happy New Year, guys, and I shall see you in the next one. Peace.